Hey guys, what is up? It's TotalXclipse here, and a few days ago we saw the launch of the new survival DLC in The Division. So here I bring to you a full-on guide to surviving and really making the most of this new DLC mode. Now, if you do like this video, please drop a thumbs up, especially if you found it helpful. It's crammed with information, and also if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe. Anyway, I'm keeping it short and we're going straight into the video. First off, from the get-go, you will want to focus on crafting a piece of clothing, scavenge everything in the start of building, and then create a piece of clothing to keep you warm. The warmer the clothes are, the longer you have to stay in firefights, which is very useful in PvP, as if you can stay out longer, the other player is going to have to retreat back and they will possibly be endangered of getting damaged from the cold and dying. This also allows you to scavenge for longer as well, and allowing you to search more thoroughly and gain an upper hand against other players. The second thing I wanted to mention was to note that the temperature outside and the temperature rating of your clothing determines how long you can stay outside. So if your clothes are warmer than the outside temperature, you will not have a time limit outside or running between fires. Also, the external temperature does change, so if it's exceptionally cold and your heat meter is dropping extremely quickly, head to the underground to spend a long time looting down there and covering a lot of area without the risk of getting hypothermia. The third point, at higher levels, craft mods. Most items have space for a mod, and it can give you a big upper hand against both players and hunters because players don't tend to actually craft those mods. Point 4. You will need to collect a minimum of 3 blue tier fabric and tools to create an advanced mask for the dark zone. Now, I also recommend collecting 2 more blue tier fabrics and tools to gain an extra medikit slot, as it's going to be very useful. Also, the 2 skills I recommend, Pulse and the support station, will cost you a total of 6 blue tier electric scrap, 1 tools and 1 medikit. So if you do have them available, make sure you invest in them. Fifth point, it's incredibly important to scavenge as much as possible early on. So try to sneak around the NPCs as they have a shorter visual range, so you should be able to avoid unnecessary firefights. And in PvP, stay away from the helicopter crash site because it does have good loot, and there will no doubt be players looking out to take someone out early on. It's also the early beacon which everyone travels to, so there'll be less items available for scavenging. Locations of interest will have plenty of loot available, but also they tend to be quite heavily guarded, so what you can do is, if you see another player over there, or in general being attacked by NPCs or attacking NPCs, you can choose to watch them die, then scavenge all their stuff, or if they are fighting and doing pretty well, you can join them. PvE is perfectly fine. PvP you have to be a bit more careful, but it can be very good just for you both to get that extra items from the dropped NPCs. Now, I really like raiding the underground. I've always found lots of loot down there, as most people seem to avoid them for some reason, and I have no idea why. Also, check shelters, especially ones such as the police station, hospitals, or flats. So you can expect to find weapon parts at the police stations. Medicine tend to be more frequent around ambulances and hospitals. It's quite self-explanatory really, and also food and drink around flats. Also vending machines, you can get drinks, which would have saved me a lot of time in my first playthrough. Now, don't forget the shops as well that have been littered along the streets. They're still there and they have plenty of items to be scavenged, or plenty of fabric and tools. They also another good place to check out if you have a tier 1 mask is the contaminated areas also have great loot, but you have to have the mask first. Now, point 6, scavenged items aren't split. It's important to bear that in mind, so you make sure that you pick up your items, otherwise you may find that someone else will pick it up. After all, your loss will be someone else's gain. Number 7, a great thing that many people forget to do is, once you've scavenged a lot of stuff, just break it down if you're not going to use it, simply because you'll have extra items available to build better stuff or better mods or put towards building your skills, or even high-end upgrading to high-end material for the late game. Point 8. When scavenging, you can quickly equip items. This is a lifesaver whilst you're outside in the open, open to the elements, open to enemy players. On the PC, the button is C. Instead of holding F, you just hold C and you'll equip that item. But I don't know what it is for console players, so check your key mappings when you start off. Tip number 9, being a high level character, as I'm sure you guys are aware, it's very easy to jump straight into a firefight, but starting off in survival mode, it's important to pick your fights carefully. If you're playing in a team, this is much easier. You can quite easily team up against AI, but be sure to share the loot with each other, as you want to maximize your strength as a team. There's no point getting to the end having all the rest of your team die because you've nicked all the items, only to then die against a hunter or another player later on. Also, you don't want to another point that I'll link into this tip is that you should also consider hit and run tactics against groups of enemies. It gives you a chance to regain a bit of health every time you run back, and also because of the way that the NPC have a visual range, it means that you can flank around the sides and take pot shots at people's heads, run to another flank and take that, and just maximize your damage output whilst minimizing your damage to yourself. And it's so important to always stay in cover. I know it's hard now that we're used to being tanks with awesome damage, but staying in cover is vitally important. When you're fighting against hunters, they play like real players, they have skills, so I highly recommend using shock grenades against them to stop them from healing and to also give them a break from attacking you. It gives you a chance to finish them off very quickly, and that way you can get their cash and extract. Also, be careful, they can hack your turrets. That's why I don't recommend going with the turrets skill. Part 12, hunters do tend to pursue you at least a little bit, so if you're trying to back away, try not to run into a bad position. You'll just end up being cornered off and executed. Tip number 13 is a note on consumables. Don't worry about using your medicine to stave off septicemia from the get-go. It's just going to give you that extra time. You just have to make sure you keep finding the medicines. Another thing, make sure you drink plenty. Though you will not die of dehydration, being properly hydrated allows you to see much further and spot salvageable, scavengeable items. And as with the drink, having food allows you to regain your health. Actually, I think I've tied that into a point later on, but let's not worry about that too much. Point 14, consider what builds best for you. Are you willing to sacrifice damage for health or electronics for damage? If possible, focus your build. Especially in survival, it's generally best to avoid the electronic skill altogether, because that's going to be medium to late game, and there's no point saving up loads of electronic skill that's just going to be wasted early on. So I try to tend to focus my build items in survival at 40% firearms, 60% toughness, and then avoid electronics as much as possible, but you can only do so well. 15. Choose your skills wisely. So Pulse can be extremely useful for tracking down NPCs and items, so I do advise going with it, especially in PvP. Also, choose between a health station or a first aid kit. I just find them very useful to help keep you alive. If you don't want to go with that, by all means, don't. Go with bullet shield or something. I've heard people talking about that. One that I quite often decide to go with instead of Pulse is the proximity mine. Simply because proximity mine? sticky shot, sticky mine, sticky explosive, that one. Simply because it gives, against hunters, it will stop them for a moment, allowing me to focus on them and finish them off. Same with the shot grenades. And like I mentioned earlier, I don't recommend going with the turret as it can be hacked by the hunters. Point 16. Fires can give away your location, so use them cautiously in PvP. If you have still a bit of heat on you, it might be better to run a little bit further on and head to a sheltered location or even a hideout, rather than choosing to go to a fire where someone can pick you off, which is exceptionally important if you're one of those who likes to wrap up warmer and hunt down the cold, weary victim, hunting from the shadows like a trained assassin. Point 17, check your mini-map, and I cannot express how important this one is. It gives you the locations of both important areas like landmarks, shows you where your objectives are, but more importantly, it gives you where all the all the fires are, where all the shelters are when you're nearby them, also all the hideouts, and even better, all the items that you've missed scavenging. The amount of times I've found weapon boxes using that, and they've been 2 meters from me and I haven't seen them and would have walked away. Check your minimap every now and then. It's really important. Those who have a good knowledge of the battlefield are going to survive much better than anyone who doesn't look at it. Point 18, if you want to maximize your experience, hoard items as much as possible. There are certain objectives that you should fulfill at the end of the mission. So for example, killing one hunter, for example, gives you a massive boost to experience. If you can kill more, obviously that is composite, it adds up. Also extra food and water, meds, medikits, not being downed, extracting, reviving a player, killing players all offer you ways to gain more experience. And if you want the most points, do this in PvP where you gain a bonus 20%. The main reason for doing this is those amazing caches that you get at the end of it. The first time I completed the survival, I got like 6 caches in total and just did amazing. I boosted my level, my gear score level from like 230 to 250 in one match. So definitely try to maximize them. Food, as I mentioned before, will allow you to regain health, but you can also go to hideouts, which will also regenerate the health for you as well, which can be very useful during the early game when you're starting to freeze to death and losing a lot of health that way, or if you have no medikits or no skills available. Now we do have some special tactics for you. So my first special tactic, we'll put it as tip number 20. During extraction, you will not be able to extract until the enemy presence is gone. Now this is frustrating for us, but it's actually very useful if you think about it. Each player will spawn a hunter when they enter the evac location. So consider using this to your advantage. If you know you can take more than one hunter and a player is extracting, by all means enter this area to spawn a hunter, retreat back so that they can kill the other player or at least weaken him, and then you can enter again and just finish them all off. Kill either both the hunters if you're competent enough, or you can just finish off the player who's just finished them and is trying to grab the loot. This is a dangerous tactic, but the extra cash plus the other player's stuff can definitely be worth it. Also, a good point to realize is that if you're the only one extracting items in an evac location and there are 2 hunters or more, you know that there are other players there and you can't guarantee whether they're going to be friendly or enemy if you're in PvP. In which case it's going to be best to consider retreating to a better location and let the other player deal with those 2 hunters or all of those hunters. Tip number 21, if you need warmth but don't have any fire or shelter nearby and you think you're going to lose a lot of health before getting there, back to a safe area, consider setting yourself alight with an incendiary grenade if you have one. You will gain your temperature back up at an exponential rate, and you will lose a bit of health, but it's a balance that you should consider. It might just save your life in the long run. Tip 22, if you have a 5-minute timer on your septicemia but are extracting, don't use your meds. There's no point, because you have, if you have 5 minutes left, your extraction time is going to be 3 minutes plus, 30 seconds, maybe a minute for the extraction and getting there. So you'll still have a minute extra, and you'll still get those extra experience points for not using that medicine. My final point number 23, is to always have a medikit available so that you can revive yourself in player versus enemy gameplay. But if you're in PvP, it's best to use your medikits first, simply because if a player is attacking you, they will finish you off before you're able to revive yourself. So there you go, guys. That is my first guide to playing the survival DLC. I hope it was useful. I will be doing scavenging runs and point out the best places to check out when you start your spawning, when you spawn into the game. So if you are interested in watching that, by all means, please subscribe to my channel. If you want to see more, it's obviously best to subscribe, and if you like this video, please like it. And if you have any questions, be sure to just drop them in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.